Thank you, Stan, and thank you for that heartfelt introduction. It's been such a great pleasure to work with you for over 30 years. Hello, my fellow Academy members and annual Assembly guests. 1 year ago, when my term as AAPM&R President began on a different virtual platform, I could not have imagined that we would find ourselves meeting yet again in the digital space, influenced by a pathogen that continues to challenge our resilience. I was so certain that I would be speaking to you from a stage in the convention center in Nashville, Tennessee, but certain as I was, here we are again. Regardless of our physical location, I've been looking forward to this week, the culmination of my year as president of your Academy. I've also been looking forward to giving this address, in which I will share with you my thoughts on the subject of uncertainty, in terms far removed from our frustrations and disappointments about not being in person at the annual assembly. Rather, I am going to discuss a concept that is captured in a simple phrase, 3 words, that I have long believed represents the essence of physiatry and physiatrists, a tolerance for uncertainty. I will ask you to indulge a short story about my personal journey that started my physiatric career. I grew up and schooled in New York City through medical school and matched a residency position at the University of Washington in Seattle, a renowned program then and now. But I quickly became disillusioned and uncertain about my future in PM&R. As I remember it now, there were way too many chronic conditions for my liking, far afield from my goal of being a non-surgical orthopedist, as was the nomenclature back then. The year was 1984, and the scientific bar in PM&R was understanding the physics of diathermy. I desired more, shall we say, cutting-edge science, and believed that I would be better fulfilled as a forensic pathologist, following in the footsteps of a then TV character, Quincy, an LA medical examiner with a detective's demeanor and a bit of an attitude. So, I decided to leave PM&R, and I was accepted into a pathology program in Boston. I very clearly remember my level of anxiety when informing my then chair, Dr. Justice Lehman, of my decision. Now let me help you understand the context. I am a 28-year-old kid from New York City telling a physiatric icon with a dominating German persona, who, by the way, really wore button-down white shirts when hiking, that I was disenchanted with physiatry and was leaving his program. At the time, I felt very certain about my decision to leave. Or was I? Before accepting that pathology residency position, I was introduced to a young physiatrist and another future and now current icon in the field, Dr. Stanley Herring. Stan helped me to realize that there was a path for me in PM&R, and obviously I did not become a forensic pathologist. Dr. Lehman graciously allowed me to stay, and I finished my residency in Seattle. Unfortunately, there were no sports or spine fellowship opportunities in 1986, so my first job was in an IRF and in an outpatient pain management center. In retrospect, that job was a great decision. I figured that if one can appreciate the biopsychosocial complexities of chronic pain and disability, one should be able to handle the complexities of injured athletes. But my path was still nonlinear, with self-imposed side trips, such as committing great personal energy and time resources to other organizations like ACSM and NAS, all the while remaining uncertain if I would find a secure home in PM&R. Throughout my 34 years as a physiatrist, I've often reflected on the topic of uncertainty and whether that is my personal shortcoming. Now, I do not intend to go all quantum on you, but I attended an engineering university and have strangely fond memories of quantum physics classes. One of my favorite mental puzzles is the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. At its very core, this principle states that if you can measure the position of a quantum particle, let's say an electron, you have now introduced a variable so that once you find it, it is no longer there. Now, I am going to take some physics license here because the uncertainty principle does not have a frame of reference in the macro world, but imagine I am an electron. Early in my career, every time I thought I found myself, my reality was that I did not know where I was going to be. Early in my career, uncertainty gave rise to negative constructs such as doubt, misgivings, and skepticism. But on a grander scale, uncertainty also prompted curiosity and a quest for knowledge. And in my opinion, the humbling nature of not having all the answers helps us become more equal with our patients, and therefore truer healthcare partners. Uncertainty exists throughout physiatry. I have grown to accept uncertainty as the nature of our specialty, not a shortcoming of training or a sign of personal weakness. In fact, I will posit that it takes great fortitude to be physiatrists, to not let uncertainty diminish our value as medical providers. In a quiet moment, I encourage you to reflect on uncertainty in your professional lives and how that uncertainty may empower you. Let me share a few reference points from my professional world. Consider the understanding and treatment of chronic pain and disability. Very early in my career, when I was working in that chronic pain management clinic, I was absolutely certain that if physiatrists were engaged early in the care continuum, that we could prevent the spiral toward chronic pain and disability. True enough, research has shown that physiatric involvement prior to spine surgery can prevent unnecessary procedures and potentially disabling outcomes. But what I once perceived as confidence was offset by a miscalculation as to the complexity of biopsychosocial variables and how they contribute to patient outcomes. Do I think I provide value? Yes, I do. Do I think I can influence the development of disability? Hopefully to some degree, but here that uncertainty principle applies as well. You may recognize disability, but you may not be able to predict its course. And being a sports medicine doctor does not buffer you from clinical uncertainties either. Consider concussions and the uncertain risk of developing chronic neurological sequelae, or return to play after an episode of transient quadriplegia. How do you advise your patient athlete who is an 18-year-old high school football player, or 21-year-old Division I collegiate soccer player, or a 25-year-old professional hockey player with a history of multiple concussions and lingering symptoms, or a single episode of transient quadriparesis with a normal workup? When the stakes get bigger and bigger, does the context of do no harm change? On its face, the answer to that question should not be uncertain, but we function in a wide gray zone. And now consider the latest clinical uncertainty facing physiatry, that being long COVID. We are recognizing a syndrome, brain fog, weakness, dysautonomia, fatigue, and activity intolerance, but we are presently uncertain as to a predictable outcome. Whether long COVID, brain injury, or chronic low back pain, does the inability to predict a clear and definitive outcome weaken our clinical value? Absolutely not, as long as we are willing to accept and engage patients within a framework of uncertainty. Our value is not just what we deliver, it is how we deliver it. I was once certain it was pure science that I sought, but learned that my strengths and skills were interacting with patients with complex problems, maximizing ways to communicate, educate, guide, advocate, and partner with them. Many physicians tend to contextualize healthcare in absolute terms. They often set boundaries to limit their personal distress. But as physiatrists, the language of relative uncertainty is comforting, and it makes us more real. It enhances the connection with our patients. We offer patients an aspect of medicine that others either would not or could not do, and that is how I choose to define value-based care. One of the most important concepts that I can share with the next generations of physiatrists is that uncertainty is our culture, not our perceived weakness. It is what unites our incredibly diverse specialty. A tolerance for uncertainty is our personality. It is what drives us, what distinguishes us, what allows us to thrive when others cannot. Uncertainty places us right in the center of the Venn diagram, connecting our primary care colleagues, our specialty colleagues, and our patients. We are at that critical intersection, serving medicine like no one else can because we embrace uncertainty. Let me now give you a glimpse into the future of physiatry, at least as I see it. How a tolerance for uncertainty guides us in utilizing technology, how it keeps us humble, and how it informs the growth of our specialty. Consider the theme of this annual assembly, reimagining our future through technology and science. As ironic as it may seem to the outside world, physiatrists, the specialists who clean up others' problems, utilize cutting-edge technology to treat their patients. Some of you will recognize another of my sayings: embrace technology, but obey the science. It is critical that physiatrists explore science, but also respect the uncertainty of evidence when leveraging new technologies. We cannot afford to abandon the biopsychosocial construct of physiatric care, no matter how straightforward a problem may seem. As a pain medicine colleague of mine once said, "The mystery is in the history." To which I say, actively listen to your patients. You will never cease to be amazed by what you learn. Uncertainty also humbles us. It enhances our respect for people with disabilities for whom uncertainty occupies their daily lives. Uncertainty confers on us, the physiatrist, the latitude to challenge societal norms. A tolerance for uncertainty is a framework to confront ableism in our society. Let me quote a statement from the COVID-19 white paper series that we published in the PM&R Journal in June. This was from the paper Lessons Learned from Impacts of the COVID-19 Pandemic on the Disability Community. The COVID-19 pandemic has exposed and amplified many of the long-standing barriers, biases, and inequities in healthcare services for people with disabilities. Physiatrists are well positioned to lead the change toward a more inclusive, accessible, and equitable system of care. Physiatry's unique approach to patient care presents an opportunity to be leaders in this next charge in the disability rights movement. My professional work is with patients with spine and other MSK problems, and even without the extremes of physical or cognitive impairments, they still experience suffering and disability. Regardless of who they are and what they have, understanding the uncertainty in our patients' journeys gives new meaning to empathy, and it compels the patient-physician relationship to be a more balanced partnership. And at the sake of being repetitive, the most unique and effective skill that I believe physiatrists possess is the ability to communicate in the language of uncertainty and to translate biopsychosocial complexities so that there is patient buy-in and thus an identifiable pathway forward. I will complete this address with a discussion as to how uncertainty may give us an advantage as we continue to build our specialty. Most of us are aware of the research demonstrating physiatry as a specialty with a high risk of burnout. In 2019, a summary paper from Mayo Proceedings identified PM&R in the top 5 U.S. medical specialties for reported burnout in 2014 and again in 2017. The Academy is currently working with Stanford University's WellMD and WellPhD Center in partnership with AAPM&R and AAP to hopefully inform unique ways to mitigate burnout in our specialty. To that end, I have cast forth the idea of developing a new metric called the uncertainty quotient. This will be a short survey given to medical students at the end of their 3rd year of medical school. 5 introspective statements, as follows, will be scored. Regarding care of patients, 1. I prefer that medical problems have distinct solutions. 2. I feel inadequate when I cannot offer a clear explanation. 3. I am uncomfortable managing chronic conditions. 4. I view medicine as a science more so than an art. 5. I do not enjoy working in a gray zone. Each statement would be scored 3 points for agreement, 2 points for neutral, and 1 point for disagreement. A total score of 1 to 5 would suggest a high tolerance, 6 to 10 a moderate tolerance, and 11 to 15 a low tolerance for uncertainty. Medical students would be able to gain insight to their own tolerance for uncertainty as they seek their future place in medicine. And being able to more closely align the personalities of medical students to our specialty could potentially reduce the risk of developing burnout over time. I suppose this concept would bring a new meaning to the residency match. Looking back at my career, I probably faced burnout at the very beginning, but it was not known that way. With mentoring and patience, I stuck with physiatry. My personality was clearly a good match to this specialty. I have learned that I thrive on uncertainty. Some may consider that as being capricious, But uncertainty exists in all of us, and we can choose to harness it many different ways. Ultimately, uncertainty begets problem solving, and any way you cut it, physiatrists are medicine's best problem solvers. You just need a high tolerance for uncertainty to succeed. It has been an honor to be the president of your academy. Take care, and good luck to all of you. And now I will introduce our next speaker, Dr. Eric Antonson. Dr. Eric Antonson is an associate professor of emergency medicine with a co-appointment as an associate professor of space medicine at the Center for Space Medicine, both at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, Texas. He received his BS, MS, and PhD in aerospace engineering from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and later his MD from the University of Illinois at Chicago. He is board certified in emergency medicine and practices at Ben Taub General Hospital in Houston, Texas. From 2015 to 2018, he served as the element scientist for exploration medical capabilities in NASA's Human Research Program. From 2018 to 2021, he served as the Assistant Director for Risk Management for the Human Health and Performance Directorate at NASA's Johnson Space Center, where he was responsible for chairing the Human System Risk Board, leading research to protect human health and understand human performance in space. He has worked in a variety of fields as an engineer and physician, including spacecraft electric rocket propulsion, HIV/AIDS research in Zambia, and providing emergency medical support for the Red Bull Stratus and StratX high-altitude skydive missions. His current research interests focus on risk management and mitigation in human spaceflight. On a more personal note, I have a strong fascination with space and space travel, and I hope we safely land a human on Mars during my lifetime. From my first meeting with Dr. Antonson, we both recognized that there is a parallel between health concerns in deep space travel with the types of health issues that physiatrists treat on Earth. I've invited Dr. Antonson to share his knowledge and experience about space medicine and to help connect the dots with physiatry. I hope you will find his presentation entertaining, informative, and provocative.